The case has been debated in the small town of Mascotte for nearly a year, but will finally be decided in a Lake County courtroom.
Have you seated towards the section?
A jury must decide whether James Duckett raped and killed Teresa Maccabee while on duty as a Mascotte police officer. A fisherman found her body along this lake across the street from her home. Later, the medical examiner said she'd been choked, sexually assaulted, and drowned. Despite the charges, the former Mascotte police chief says his officer seemed calm the night the girl disappeared. He wonders whether the truth will ever come out.
My gut feeling is the investigation is so mixed up and such in turmoil that we will really never know what the answer is regardless of what a jury decides.
But prosecutors think the sheriff's office gathered enough evidence for a conviction. They will present tire tracks found at the scene which they say match Duckett's police car.
The jury, we're hoping, will come back with a verdict of guilty, and then we're going to seek the death penalty if he's found guilty of first-degree murder.
Still, the judge has yet to rule whether key character evidence will be admitted. Prosecutors want to call witnesses who would accuse Duckett of having sex in his patrol car on more than one occasion. While this disturbing case unfolds in court, the residents of this community will be watching. Yet some aren't sure they'll ever know what really happened along this lake last May. In Mascotte, Rob Stafford, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
While we were riding around, he started rubbing my shoulder. And before I got out, he kept telling me he liked little girls. You know, small, petite girls.
Small, petite girls. And what did you say? What was your response if he was rubbing your shoulder and telling you?
I was nervous.
Where the Circle K is on the side there. And this would be west and this would be east.
I'd say approximately 3/4 of a mile from 50.
So he was within that 3/4 mile area of Highway 50.
Yes, he was.
You were coming into town.
I'm not sure you are, but he was parked on a dirt road right along Bay Lake Road, and it was kind of on a curve. In fact, there's two roads.
He parked, moving, or how?
It was parked.
I said, what point was he parked?
He was parked.
Prosecutor Stephen Herm told jurors that witnesses, fingerprints, and pubic hair would tie former Mascotte police officer James Duckett to Teresa Maccabee's murder.
Special Agent Malone is going to come here and testify to you that in his expert opinion, that pubic hair belonged with him.
But defense attorney Jack Edmond ripped into the sheriff's office investigation which implicated his client. He said detectives ignored evidence which would have shown Duckett's innocence.
That James Duckett will not be proven guilty beyond any reasonable doubt, but that he is, without any question, innocent.
My attorney said no comment. No comment.
How did they do initial appearances in court? Usually like
6 months or something.
Yeah.
A former Mascotte police officer is frisked, fingerprinted, and booked on first-degree murder charges. James Duckett is accused of killing a little girl. This morning, that news outraged the town he once served.
I think they ought to hang him if he did it. If he really did do it, I think they ought to hang him. I hope he gets what he deserves because it's not right taking the life of a child.
Last night, a grand jury indicted Duckett for the May murder of 11-year-old Teresa Maccabee. A fisherman found her body along a lake near her home. Investigators say she was choked, sexually assaulted, and drowned. Some parents here say this has been really tough on their kids. Kids who've always learned in school to trust police officers now wonder how a man in uniform could be charged with killing one of their classmates. Many residents outside this convenience store weren't sure what to tell their children. Some are angry, others still stunned.
You don't know who to trust anymore.
You just feel like they're your protectors, not your aggressors.
But lawmen say there are problem people in every profession, even professions which usually get the most respect.
Just say that the preacher went bad. You don't stop going to church.
And the former Mascotte police chief thinks Duckett will be acquitted. Mike Brady hired him and says the sheriff's investigation implicated the wrong man.
I still believe in the man, and I'm sure that when it comes to court, all the facts will be presented, and hopefully the matter will be cleared up at that time.
Mr. Duckett, can you say anything at all? No comment, please. James Duckett turned himself in at 9 o'clock tonight. The former Mascotte police officer seemed calm when he arrived at Lake County's jail. Duckett is charged with first-degree murder in the killing of 11-year-old Teresa Maccabee. In May, a fisherman found Maccabee's body along a lake near her Mascotte home. The medical examiner says she was choked, sexually assaulted, and drowned. Today, Lake County's grand jury heard testimony from 16 witnesses connected with this case. Afterwards, the jury decided there was enough evidence to file charges.
There was a sealed indictment returned by the grand jury, and we have no further comment until that indictment's unsealed by the court.
Authorities say Duckett was on duty the night Maccabee disappeared. He later told investigators he saw the girl outside a convenience store and warned her to go home. The next day, her body turned up nearby. Since then, Duckett has been fired from his job with the police department. He later found work as a laborer. But tonight, the former officer is behind bars, in isolation for his own protection. Protection from prisoners he was once hired to arrest. The grand jury spent the day inside this closed courtroom, considering evidence in the Teresa Maccabee murder case. Lake County Sheriff Noel Griffin has called former Mascotte police officer James Duckett the prime suspect in the 11-year-old's death. In May, a fisherman found Maccabee's body along a lake near her Mascotte home. Medical reports show she was choked, sexually assaulted, and drowned. Authorities say Officer Duckett said he saw the girl outside this convenience store the night she disappeared and told her to go home. This afternoon, the medical examiner, crime lab workers, and Mascotte police officers were among those testifying before the grand jury. The grand jury can decide whether or not there's enough evidence to indict a suspect at this time.
Teresa Maccabee's cousins play, unaware of her death or how she died, unaware of the pain her parents feel.
Thought the world of her. She was just a great kid. Me and her was very close. And you can't replace a daughter like that.
Well, she was a sweet girl. At least I thought so.
A fisherman found Teresa's body in Lake Night early Tuesday morning, about a half a mile from her home. Police say the 11-year-old had been sexually assaulted, but was found fully clothed with no signs of a struggle. The medical examiner says she apparently drowned.
But she was found right here, her feet touching the bank, laying face down.
Mascotte Police Chief Michael Brady says one of his officers spotted the girl at a convenience store Monday evening. He told her to go home because it was nearing a 10:30 curfew. It's about a block from the store to Teresa's home. Her parents feel the officer should have taken the time to drive her instead of letting her walk.
How long do you think it would have took him to bring her here? 1 second. She was still here.
Chief Brady doesn't think the officer made a mistake.
The officer saw no reason to transport her that short distance. Sometimes people think we're overzealous if we do that.
Little comfort for the Maccabees, who say Teresa only left her home to buy a pencil for homework, and whose murder now leaves behind a grieving mother. In Lake County, Sharon Dennis, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
How could they come back with a verdict like that on the evidence that they had?
He believes someday he will walk away throwing off the charge of murderer. James Duckett said that after the worst day of his life.
The defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree.
The choice of whether James Duckett lives or dies now lies with the judge. Yet today he pled with a jury not to suggest he join the numbers on death row.
I'm up here to ask you to not make a double wrong here. Like I said, I did not do this. I am sorry. Lord God, I know I'm sorry for the little girl.
The plea fell on the deaf ears of the mother of the 11-year-old the jury said James Duckett raped and strangled.
Justice has finally been done.
Does it in any way relieve any of the pain you've gone through?
No, nothing will.
James Duckett saw and heard his wife agonize as she pleaded to the jury for mercy. He insists this ordeal has not hurt his family, rather brought it closer together. He tells everyone, even himself, he will be back with them, alive and free again.
Take it one day at a time. That's all you can do. That's the way I've looked at it for 6 months here, you know. I've just take it one day at a time.
In Lake County, John Duncanson, Channel 9 Eyewitness News. The sun went down as the 12-member jury discussed the fate of James Duckett.
But I just think that today really went well, and we're going to have to wait and see how this thing goes from here.
The prosecution summed up, pointing out tire tracks at the site of the girl's death, a pubic hair found in her clothing, 11-year-old Teresa Maccabee's fingerprints on the hood of the former policeman's car. That and more collected by investigators linking Duckett to the girl the night she died.
Every piece of evidence pointed to his guilt.
Defense attorney Jack Edmonds said that evidence is circumstantial and nothing more, and that no concrete evidence exists linking his client to the murder of the 11-year-old girl. And so after 2 weeks, the jury gets the baton. The fate of James Duckett lies with them, almost a year to the day that Teresa Maccabee was killed. In Lake County, John Duncanson, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
Defendant is guilty of capital sexual battery as charged in the information. So say we all, Mr. Martin, are these your verdict? Yes. Thank you. Slager, are these your verdict? Yes. Mr. DeClerc, are these your
verdict? Guilty of the offense charged and the information filed against you.
Jury find as follows that the defendant with the jury find as follows as the defendant in the information in this case. The defendant is guilty.
And so the pain continues for the family of James Duckett, for the family that has waited exactly a year for a verdict.
Justice has finally been done.
Does it in any way relieve any of the pain you've gone through?
No, nothing will.
11-year-old Teresa Maccabee was murdered a year ago. The jury says Mascotte policeman James Duckett lured her in and took her life away. This afternoon, a friend pleaded for a sentence of life imprisonment that James Duckett does not deserve the electric chair.
I'm pregnant now, and if this is a little girl, I would have no question leaving her with Jimmy.
The only suspect since day one bowed and heard his wife sob as she talked of how his own children spoke to him.
He used to say, "Daddy, can I jog with you?" And Jimmy say, "Darling, you can't stay up with Daddy." But he would say, "Oh, Daddy, I can."
Others cried too, a mother for a murdered girl who will never come back. Finally, still denying the crime this jury says he committed, James Duckett asked them for life, not death by electrocution.
Lord God, I know I'm sorry for the little girl. But I did not do what was done to that little girl. And don't put another nail in the coffin, as the saying goes, by sentencing me to die.
APH 262 CFA. The State of Florida versus James Aaron Duckett. We, the jury, find as follows as the defendant in the information in this case. The defendant is guilty of capital sexual battery as charged in the information. So say we all dated this the 10th day of May, 19... Mr. Hall, are these your verdicts?
Yes.
Are these your verdicts?
Yes. Because the jury finds you guilty of the offense charged in the information filed against you in criminal court.
News of Officer Jim Duckett's murder conviction spread like wildfire all over Lake County today. It was the talk of the town and the shops and the stores. Had his jury made the right decision? He was found guilty. You think he was? Any question in your mind?
No, I believe he was.
Any doubt in your mind that he's guilty?
No, there wasn't any doubt at all.
You think he was?
With the evidence, yes.
The folks we talked to told us the most damning testimony they heard came from 3 young women last week. Duckett allegedly tried to seduce them in a squad car, a charge he's denied, but the jury believed.
Those girls that testified, I think that really proved that.
See those little older girls that certainly had nothing to gain by telling their story. In fact, if anything, they had to tarnish their reputation somewhat.
Not only does nearly everyone here in Lake County have very strong feelings about the guilt of Officer Jim Duckett, but they also have equally strong feelings on what his sentence should be.
I believe in capital punishment.
You think he should be put to death?
Yeah.
It was unanimous. Every person we talked with today told us they think Duckett should pay the ultimate penalty for murdering 11-year-old Teresa Maccabee 1 year ago this month. In Lake County, Scott Peelan, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
I ask you again to spare my life. I did not do this. But keep in mind, when the person who did this repeats it, I want to see the face of the person and tell the victim's mother, father, sister, or brother, I'm sorry, we thought we had the right one before.
Despite that statement, Judge Jerry Lockett declared Duckett's guilt, calling the rape and murder of 11-year-old Teresa Maccabee an atrocious and heinous crime. He then imposed the sentence.
James Aaron Duckett be sentenced to death by electrocution.
Duckett showed no emotion, but his wife wept. Afterward, she said the truth will eventually come out.
But I know he's innocent, and someone out there has the answer, and I will find it.
James Duckett got one last chance to speak, and he didn't waste it. The former Mascotte policeman asked Judge Jerry Lockett to spare his life, saying the real killer was still on the loose.
When the person who did this repeats it, I want to see the face of the person and tell the victim's mother, father, sister, or brother,
I'm sorry, we thought we had the right one before.
But the judge declared Duckett guilty, calling the murder of 11-year-old Teresa Maccabee an atrocious and heinous crime. Last month, the jury convicted Duckett of raping, strangling, and drowning a little girl while on duty as an officer. This morning, Duckett received the maximum sentence.
James Aaron Duckett be sentenced to death by electrocution.
Duckett showed no emotion, but his wife wept. Teresa Maccabee's mother remained calm. Afterwards, those involved in the case gave two very different descriptions of the same man.
Because Mr. Duckett is a cold-blooded killer who contrived this murder, took on a victim that he could handle, an 11-year-old girl, and he executed her in an orange grove, and the death penalty was written for people like James Duckett.
He's probably one of the most caring people that I've ever seen. I'm not saying that because he's my brother. I'm saying that because he's a good man.
Duckett winked at his wife before deputies prepared him for prison. A van was already waiting outside the jail next door. Now James Duckett goes to death row, and his lawyer goes back to court. The former police officer still insists he's innocent, and he seems confident he'll win on appeal.
We'll be back. Worried about going to death row? No.
I know he's innocent, and someone out there has the answer, and I will find it.
In Lake County, Rob Stafford, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.